But I still think we got to have an answer for what Democrats want to say and do about our industrial power. We should make more things for a lot of reasons. But like, if nothing else, our national security. If Democrats cede ground to Donald Trump as being the only guy who's trying to do something about this, and he's failing. I mean, let's be clear, he's failing at it. If we cede that ground, we're making a huge mistake on policy and on politics. And I'm telling you, he is going to peddle the same BS he's peddled about standing up for workers when doing nothing to help them. We got to have more than just he's messed up.
All right, we're here with a Democratic congressman representing Pennsylvania's 17th district, which includes the Pittsburgh suburbs and all of Beaver County. His name is Chris Deluzio. How you doing, Congressman?
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. For folks, who don't monitor my social media as closely as they should, I popped off kind of aggressively on a video that the House Dems posted of you talking about the need for strategic tariffs last week. So I just appreciate you coming on into the Lion's Den. Who knew? Who knows what's going to happen here? Like I could have a primary challenger just like pop up like a Jerry Springer video in the podcast. But so I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Before we get to the tariff stuff, though, tell people about you. Just give us a little first date TLDR about your backstory.
Yeah, you bet. Born and raised in my district, which I love. It's Western Pennsylvania, outside Pittsburgh, all the way to the Ohio and West Virginia borders. Battleground, swing district. Went to the Naval Academy after high school. So 9/11 is my senior year of high school. It makes me 40, which I guess is middle age now.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I'm there.
Yeah. I deployed at sea a couple times. I did a tour on the ground in Iraq. And then I came home, became a lawyer, did some voting rights work, Brennan Center, work at the University of Pittsburgh, and then ran for Congress in 2022. My predecessor and friend, Connor Lamb, ran for the Senate. I held that seat. Now in my second term, serving in the House.
And there have been several profiles of you lately because you're maybe a little bit different from the PAC and the Democrats. But I want you to kind of profile yourself. How do you kind of place yourself within the Democratic, conference ideologically?
I think we're in a moment where we're scrambling the old left, right, center stuff for Democrats. Yeah. And, for a long time, that's been the divide. And yet I've been seeing colleagues across, say, the New Democrats and the Progressive Caucus and the Blue Dogs who are where I am, which is to say, like, aggressively front and center on the economy and, fighting for our people against whoever is ripping them off and making life worse. And I think that's actually like a glue that can connect more of the Democrats. There are parts of it that are pretty progressive and there are parts of it that are all about growing the pie, right? Like, it's one thing to say, you work hard, let's make sure you get a bigger piece of the pie, but let's also grow the damn thing. And I think that's where I want the party to go. And so there are parts of, more progressive populist economics, and there are parts of, my abundance colleagues that I think together that is the future for Democrats and can frankly put us in a strong position to unite to fight against Donald Trump in this moment.
Okay, I'm sorry, Chris, this is not going to work for me. I'm told by the very heavy posters that you have to either be a progressive populist or in favor of the abundance agenda. Like that, you can't have both. And it's a bitter feud among 13 people on social media. So I'm going to need you to pick a team, I think.
Yeah, and look, I have problems, I think, with that framing, and I'll tell you why. Right, I think the fighting instinct and the very honest view of power and who has it and who's in the way is the part that, my populist instinct gets clearly. And my colleagues in that point of view, I think, get that. The growth part that the abundance crowd is, I think, focused on is correct. We have to have growth. There are obstacles and people with power and institutions with power who are blocking that, which to me, I think is maybe missing from the analysis there. But I look at this, I'm like, look, people should have a bigger piece of the pie and we got to grow it. And I think that is a glue that we can have Democrats unite around. We'll have to pick some fights, and I love a good fight, believe me. But I think it's where we go. And I think it is, a real contrast to Trump's phony fake populism. I mean, this is real stuff, right? fighting against monopolies, getting whoever is in the way of us getting more affordable housing to people, making sure life's not a ripoff. Like, we will have some fights, and that's a good thing. And it will expose how fake Trump stuff is. That's just, talking points about caring about working people.
All right. I like the kumbaya stuff, but I'm going to do my best to try to pick a scab here. So what about looking back? Okay. Obviously the Democrats lost 2 of 3 presidential campaigns to Trump. As you reflect on that, like, what elements, what do you attribute that to? What are things the party should have done differently?
How long do we have?
As long as you want, as long as it's interesting.
So I'm in Western Pennsylvania, right? This is like a battleground within the battleground state. And, Trump comes on the scene. He's now been the nominee for the Republicans 3 presidential elections. And I think he picked at, right, a weakness for Democrats, which was, he was saying the things about NAFTA and saying the things about seeing manufacturing jobs go away and playing on some real frustration and anger that people in my part of the world still have. And it was both Republicans and Democrats in power across decades who, caused the death of, say, the glass factories in Western Pennsylvania, a lot of the steel mills, you name it. Trump played on that. Now, his answer is ridiculous, right? The trade war he's starting is not working. It's causing tons of pain. It's destabilizing world markets. Tariffs alone don't work. But he's played on that, and he plays on racial grievances and all the rest. But I think his ability to be a chaos agent and to play on the fact that people have seen the American dream slip away, you're not more likely to be better off than your parents. And that's a change in the first generation that's happened for since the Second World War. That's a problem. And I don't think he has the answers for that. But if we're offering up, we're going to defend the norms and institutions and the elite people who run them, when they've failed, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So just a little bit too establishment-y for you, for Kamala and Secretary Clinton.
It's not her. It's not a personal thing to her. Yeah. I think it just has to do with, who Democrats are fighting for. And I have this fear that Democrats are too wedded to this. We got to find a win-win everywhere. And listen, there are plenty of problems where you get a win-win and it's great. But sometimes there's an asshole who's hurting your people. And it's not enough to say I'm fighting for you. It's also got to be I'm fighting against that asshole. And I think we need a little more of that as Democrats. You had my buddy Pat Ryan on recently, and he and I talk about this a lot. It doesn't matter. It's not just Donald Trump or anyone else. It is whoever is making life miserable for your people is who we got to fight. And we got to name them, and we got to take them on, because you can't just be, I'm going to fight for you without naming who that villain is. I think Democrats need a little more of that.
And the villains for you are?
Depends, right?
Who else?
It depends. I mean, right now, Donald Trump is wrecking the global economy. He's a villain in many ways. But it's also, a monopoly who's screwing over my local pharmacies. I had a couple local pharmacists come down to D.C. with me. We launched this, anti-monopoly caucus. These are small business owner types. Think of Rotary Club, local chamber of commerce. These are not, fire-breathing lefties. And they're important businesses in a community on your main street. And they're getting squeezed by PBMs, these pharmacy benefit managers. They're essentially monopolists. There's 3 or 4 of these companies that got 80% of the market share, and they're killing pharmacies. And so I name that as a fight. It is a fight. And it's an example where there's a bad guy who's hurting pharmacies, who's driving up prescription costs, and you got to name them and what you're going to do about it. And I think we need more of those kinds of fights. We should pick them, we should take them on, and we should be clear who we're standing up for in those fights.
All right. Well, let's get to our little, I wouldn't call it a fight. Let's get to our little minor tiff over the tariff strategy. Mm-hmm. And I want to, for people who didn't see it, this was the video that House Dems put out where you were kind of talking about your position on tariffs. Let's listen to it.
Chris Deluzio here from Western Pennsylvania, proud son of the Rust Belt. I think a wrong for decades consensus in Washington on free trade's been a race to the bottom. It's hollowed out our industrial power, cost us good jobs. The president's tariff announcement, though, and his trade strategy has been chaotic. It's been inconsistent. We should not treat our economic allies, like Canada, the same as trade cheats like communist China. I do not want to see corporations use the cover of these tariffs to now price gouge families. Tariffs are a powerful tool They can be used strategically or they can be misused. They've got to be used in sectors that make sense. They've got to be paired with real, meaningful industrial policies.
You know, not bad for a panel discussion that you and I are on. Disagree, you give that view, or you give a more friendly view. But like, is this really kind of the moment for that? Strategic tariffs are, isn't there a clearer message that Democrats could be offering at the moment?
Well, I think let's start with the easy thing, right? What Donald Trump is doing is reckless and dangerous, and he should stop. I mean, I think you have near unanimity, I think, among Democrats that on that point. Period. I don't think it's ever enough for Democrats to just be this guy's bad and particularly just Donald Trump is bad. Like, we've tried that, right? We lost the presidency, the House, and the Senate. I don't think we can define ourselves just in opposition to him. And yet what he's doing is tremendously dumb and dangerous. And even a guy like me from the Rust Belt, from Steel Country, who is mad about seeing manufacturing go away, can say clearly what he's doing is wrong, is foolish, is dangerous. Like, I think that helps Democrats when a guy like me can say how bad President Trump has been here.
Yeah. I mean, even from a working class perspective, though, I guess my point is, isn't the argument right now that what he's doing is destructive and it's actually hurting working people? It's going to hurt their bottom line at the grocery store. It's going to hurt, the cost of building things. It's going to cost jobs. I mean, some manufacturing jobs are going to be lost, over these sorts of tariffs. And isn't that a clearer message in contrast to maybe Biden's industrial policy, better than trying to split the baby on tariffs, I guess is my question.
Yeah, maybe, right? Like, I think the first part for sure, like, I spent some time this last week with some folks in organized labor in Western Pennsylvania who were saying exactly what you were saying. Like, we're taking hits on our pensions. We're worried about losing out on bids for new construction and jobs because of materials and uncertainty and costs. Like, absolutely. But I still think we got to have an answer for what Democrats want to say and do about our industrial power. And this is not just some, homage to the past of we should make more things as some good on its own. We should make more things for a lot of reasons. But, like, if nothing else, our national security. I serve on the Armed Services Committee. I know what our defense industrial base is. It is a hollow shell of its past. We cannot produce the things we need for our national security, period. And I think if Democrats cede ground to Donald Trump as being the only guy who's trying to do something about this, and he's failing. I mean, let's be clear, he's failing at it. If we cede that ground, we're making a huge mistake on policy and on politics, right? Because we got to win in Pennsylvania. We got to win in Michigan. We got to win in Wisconsin, not just in 26 in the midterms, but we got to win the presidency back. And I'm telling you, he is going to peddle the same BS he's peddled about standing up for workers when doing nothing to help them. We got to have more than just he's messed up. And I think for me, Democrats have to be able to win in these places. We know how to do it, right? I intend to keep winning. Josh Shapiro, I think, is going to kick butt next year in Pennsylvania. So we got to be able to have a message and something beyond just he is bad on trade for us to be able to earn back some trust to people.
I think that the national security side of that is totally right, and it was in line. I don't think that President Biden was particularly great at enunciating that message, but like was in line with what they were trying to do, right, with chips and a lot of the stuff in the Biden administration.
I think like the abundance crowd correctly pointed out, right, that the Chips and Science Act, okay, good bill. I would have supported it if I were in the Congress. You got to move fast. It can't take years and years and years to get stuff done. Same with the IRA, right? Getting money out to build, say, the EV charging infrastructure can't take a decade. So there's something to be said for speed and actually getting the government to accomplish things, especially as you're trying to attract private investment to act here.
All right, now you're speaking my language. Okay, so now as you got me excited, I got to ask you one more question. We got to dork out on free trade for a second. Have you seen the chart, the manufacturing jobs chart, and how it was like basically already going down? And the argument being that there are structural forces that were making this happen, and like NAFTA really didn't change the trajectory that much at all. What would you say to that?
So a couple of things, right? That's number of jobs rather than like share of the economy, and so there are some productivity gains baked into that. Sure. It's also, NAFTA was not the beginning of different trade policies in this country, right? The steel industry collapsed in the mid 80s in Western Pennsylvania. That's before NAFTA, but we still had pressure from, say, Japan before that. We had pressure domestically where, the South was basically guaranteeing these companies there'll never be a union here. Bring your factory to Arkansas or Alabama. So we had domestic pressure against the Rust Belt for a while. And we did have, industries take a real gut punch post NAFTA, automotive, glass manufacturing, some others. But again, like if trade makes sense with our allies on fair terms, absolutely. That has gone too far that we can no longer produce the things we need even for our basic defense. The CHIPS and Science Act wasn't just some academic thing. We had essentially allowed the Communist Chinese Party to dominate global manufacturing of semiconductor chips. That's a major problem. And so I think there have been excesses here. And I'll take you back to parts of my district, right? We could drive along the Allegheny and Ohio rivers and go through the glass factory and steel mill towns and see what was left when, say, a J&L Steel in Aliquippa went from more than 10,000 jobs to zero. I mean, it is real devastation and pain that comes to communities when this happens. I think the bargain, may have worked out in some parts of the country. It has not been a good bargain for a town like Aliquippa to go from, again, 10,000 plus union steelworker jobs at J&L to, now you got some cheaper stuff at Walmart. It's not been a good bargain for lots of people.
All right. To be continued. One more thing on the tariff. You guys are looking at investigating insider trading among people, your colleagues in Congress. Following the Trump tariff reversal, it seems like our girl Marjorie Taylor Greene managed to make some smart investments, shall we say, before the Trump tariff reversal. What do you make of what's happening on that issue?
Man, it's corrupt, right? Like I'm a guy who doesn't think anyone in Congress should be trading stocks, period. Right. So let's start with that. We all get access to sensitive information. Just the fact that people make money trading stocks, I don't care what party you are. I think it's corrupt. People hate it. The tariff announcement, now this feels like weeks ago, right? Remember, he tweeted about it or put it on Truth Social or whatever, great day to buy. And then a couple hours later announces the pause. And there's some evidence people knew about that and were making some trades. That is corrupt to its core. I think it's like the exact reason people don't trust our government. And so I am all in for whatever investigation we can do to find out who knew and did they make trades based on that? Because they're not just doing this in isolation. They're ripping people off, right? You're a pension fund. You're on the other side of these people trading. You're losing money at the expense of people enriching themselves based on their jobs. So I don't think it's that complicated. Like people can smell corruption, and this is it.
I want to go to the Oval Office meeting yesterday the president had with Bukele, I guess self-styled world's coolest dictator from El Salvador, who's currently holding a number of people in his torture prison there. Just at the biggest picture, I'm wondering what you made of what we saw in the Oval.
I struggle to put it to words because it's just insane to think about this is where the leader of the free world is now. And, one of the people who's come up, the gentleman from Maryland, the union apprentice, was here lawfully. The government conceded that they removed him from this country by error. And, Trump is now facing down a 9-0 Supreme Court against him, that this guy ought to be brought back home. And I actually think a really important, maybe a little bit overlooked part of this. You had the leader of the building trades unions in Washington last week rallying.
I actually have that audio. Let's listen to it, and then we'll talk about it. Let's listen to it.
Yeah.
We're the building trades, the backbone of America. You want to build a $5 billion data center? Want more six-figure careers with health care retirement and no college debt? You don't call Elon Musk. You call us. North America's building trades unions. And yeah, that means all of us, including our brother, smart apprentice, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who we demand to be returned to us and his family now. Bring him home.
Hell yeah. All right, go ahead.
No, I mean, look, that's powerful, right? Like these are not bleeding heart lefties. These are the guys and gals in the building trades. We're talking iron workers, carpenters, steam fitters, you name it. And I was touring Local 12, sheet metal workers in my district last few days, talking about all the stuff you'd expect. You know what else they brought up? Bringing their brother home. And that's like a really powerful thing that you see labor standing with this guy and helping, frankly, do the thing we got to do, which is defend our Constitution, the rule of law. Like, that's a powerful part of this that I hope gets a lot of attention. So I'm glad you had that clip.
Yeah, I also think it's powerful because you hear him, you hear Rogan talk about this. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I feel like there is an elite view in DC that's like, it's mostly globalists anyway, right? Like they're for looser immigration, but they know that that's unpopular, right? And that Trump won on immigration. And so there's this like uncertainty or unwillingness a little bit or caution about engaging on something like this where it's so cut and dry. It's not really even about the border or security. It's about everybody's individual rights. So like we're wrongly send somebody to a foreign gulag. I mean, that is madness. And I do think that can resonate with people who also think we need a stronger border, right? Like think we need a stronger border, concerned about immigration, et cetera.
Yeah. And like, look, I think it gets to the heart of, we have to tell stories too and like talk about our values. Yeah. Most people think that you want to work hard, take a shot at the American dream. Like, hell yeah, that ought to be front and center. What we expect of citizens in this country, what we expect of aspiring citizens, like we want our government to reward. This is a guy who's working his butt off to become a union apprentice, trying to do exactly that, who had every right to be in this country. And so it should outrage you. And I think, we shouldn't be afraid of calling that out, right? Of like, this is a moment where, our system is going to be tested and tested around a guy who was doing what he should have been doing, working hard, trying to earn his shot at the American dream.
Do you think there'd be any value in Democrats getting a CODEL or something to go to El Salvador to try to draw more attention to this, or what do you think is the right approach?
Maybe. I mean, we don't have all the answers down in Washington, which is like we should always remember that as elected officials. Maybe, and I think also what the president does in the next few days is going to tell us a hell of a lot about how the next year or so is going to go and where and whether we're going to have a constitutional crisis like this.
All right. Finally, we're ending with bro talk and conversations with Democratic elected officials these days, since there's a big bro gap in the electorate. As you mentioned earlier, we had your colleague Pat Ryan on a couple weeks ago. I asked him, I was like, are there any Democrats who could go to an MMA fight or a WWE event and just like hang and like fit in and be normal, or come to an LSU tailgate with me? And he nominated you. So my question for you is, which of those, kind of cultural events do you think, you could engage with without coming off like a dork?
I love it. As a kid, I was a huge WWF fan, which I guess now WWE. And so like,
who is your favorite wrestler?
So Stone Cold is a little bit older. Like I'm a little older by the time he kind of pops off, but like became, a favorite as a kid. Like Hulk Hogan was the guy, right? I'm 40.
Ultimate Warrior for me.
Yeah, I get that.
I think he went MAGA though.
Did he? I didn't even know that.
I think so. Okay. Sad.
Yeah. So like, I love the spectacle of wrestling, and we got some like semi-pro local stuff in Western PA that I got to get to soon.
You should. That's what we're talking about. A semi-pro wrestling match. I'd like. I think that's a good campaign for stop for you. I'll get with your team on that. All right, Chris Deluzio, thanks so much for coming on. And we'll have a trade symposium with some of the Abundance crew sometime soon. Good. All right.